Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Let's Taste with the Intrepid Wino. My name is James Scaresbrook. I think by the time this comes out, it'll be past Christmas, but Merry Christmas to everyone and Happy New Year. Looking forward to 2017. It's going to be pretty momentous, I'm sure, for most people, myself included. At some point I'll be releasing my wine from this past year and hopefully making some more wines as well. But of course, with Christmas comes celebration, and with celebration tends to come wine. So I thought I would open up some bottles that were gifted to me, and they are from a producer that I became a lot more acquainted with when I attended the Australian Alternative Varieties wine show in Mildura quite recently as the fellow, and it was really wonderful to meet the winemaker Jo. But we are looking at the wines of Billy Button, which is a brand that Jo works with in the Alpine Valleys. I think possibly also some King Valley fruit as well, with a bit of a focus on Italian grape varieties, which if you know me at all, you know that I am very, very excited with. So we're looking at 3 of her white wines. 3, of course, Italian varieties from different parts of Italy, in fact. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Alpine Valleys of Victoria translate to those grape varieties which come from different parts of Italy. So we're going to start off with Verduzzo. Verduzzo is a white variety from Friuli. Typically, it's not a particularly widely planted variety in Friuli. Typically it's used for sweet wines. A lot of really good examples come from further north, not far from, I think, the Austrian border, and yeah, beautiful sweet wines. So Verduzzo is an aromatic variety. I think the history was it was brought in as something else. It was Verdicchio, or yeah, I think it might have been they thought it was Verdicchio, but it ended up being Verduzzo, which, you know, not surprising. They're not dissimilar in terms of names. But this is the 2015 vintage. I'm not sure what the recommended retail price is. Jo, if you're watching, please let me know in the comments. A little bit of colour here. It's got a lovely kind of yellowy lemon sort of colour. Very ripe, but not sort of pushing into overripe at all. Stone fruit, a little bit of citrus as well. It kind of reminds me of Chardonnay in a way. Yeah, it's got kind of a very, very slight sort of salty, buttery character to it. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's been a bit of lees contact with this winemaking. Definitely, yeah, in that white peach sort of apricot realm. A little bit of floral in there as well. Just a faint touch of nuttiness. Let's taste. Reasonably textural. Decent amount of weight there. You get that ripe fruit on the palate as well. From memory, I think 15 was a slightly warmer vintage, so that probably is being reflected in the character of the wine. There's a bit of viscosity there to it. Sort of quite, you know, focused in the mid palate there. There's not heaps of breadth to it, but absolutely, you know, consistent fruits. Stylistically, it does kind of like the structure and the texture kind of does remind me of Chardonnay, which is quite interesting. Verduzzo is not really a variety I'm very, very familiar with. I haven't had a lot of Verduzzo, even from Italy. I guess part of the reason being that you don't see a lot of dry Verduzzo wine. But that's a really pleasant wine. I'm quite happy with that. You know, it's got good ripeness, the balance is nice, and it actually has a little bit of depth and personality to it. It's not just a straight up and down kind of white wine. nice and clean, fresh. I think it definitely has enough guts to it that it's going to match with food. Let's move on to wine number 2, which is Fiano. This is a 2016 vintage wine. Fiano is a variety you find in southern Italy, in places like Campania. It's quite famous. You find it a little bit in Basilicata. I think also there's some Fiano in Puglia. But Fiano is probably one of the champion white Italian varieties in Australia right now. There's some really exciting white wines being made from Fiano. I've had Brendan and Laura Carter on Let's Taste. I also had them on my podcast, the Vincast, and they're doing some exciting things with Fiano, some of which comes from Ricatera Farms in the Riverland region. Fiano is you find quite a bit in Victoria. You also find it quite a bit in South Australia. I believe you find a fair amount of Fiano in McLaren Vale as well. So Fiano tends to be a slightly more textural wine. You do get slightly more interesting characters from it, with a little bit more technique, whether it's work with barrel, lees, skins. It's not a straightforward variety. It is slightly more food. It has the tendency to show some salinity as well, which is not uncommon in places like Campania, in Avellino, which is not too far away from the coast, so you're going to get a little bit of influence there. Slightly less colour than the Verduzzo. It's still got some decent colour, but the Verduzzo had a slightly more concentrated yellow. Here it's a very pale yellow, a pale sort of lemon colour. Brighter and more aromatic than the Verduzzo, which is quite interesting. It has it's more in the citrus orchard fruit realm. Sort of orange blossom, apples, pears. But this one has this sort of interesting, like a dustiness, sort of. It's got like a I don't know, like a floral perfume sort of note. Very subtle though, but it sort of just sits over the fruit. The fruit's quite contained. It's reasonably pretty, but also intriguing. There's something a little bit different about it. Let's taste. The Fiano has a little bit more carry through than the Verduzzo. It's the Verduzzo sort of seemed a bit more dense, particularly in the mid palate. The Fiano sort of builds and kind of accelerates towards the back. It's much fresher, leaner. Consistent fruit on the palate. It's funny, it finishes fresher, but it also sort of lingers a little bit more. And there's a nice texture to it, very subtle, which is quite intriguing. And I think maybe it needs a bit more time. Maybe it shows a different side of itself with food, so I'm interested to try that with some food and see what it's like. The last one is Vermentino, also from 2016 vintage. Sorry about the slightly scratched label there. Vermentino is a reasonably widely planted white variety. It's possibly most famous in Sardinia. You find it on the island of Corsica as well. It's planted close to the coast in Tuscany, in Liguria, where it's sometimes known as Pigato. You find it in parts of the south of France as well. In Piemonte, it's called Favorita. But Vermentino is probably the other. I mean, you can't really include Pinot Grigio in that kind of discussion. Pinot Grigio is very, very widely planted in Australia now, but the two white varieties which I think are getting the most attention, with the exception of Prosecco, Fiano and Vermentino. And I think it's probably because both of them are reasonably malleable varieties. You can plant it in quite different conditions and it'll adapt and it'll change, and you can get different kinds of wines. I think what possibly people might be making the mistake of doing is planting and expecting it to look a certain way or to look like Italian examples, and you know, you're never going to see the same characters, and I think people should stop comparing as far as quality or style with the Italian examples and try to make an Australian expression of these Italian varieties in the same way that you can't really compare Australian Pinot Noir or Shiraz with French examples. You can't compare Australian Riesling with German examples. They're just not in the same category because they're completely different conditions. So I'm interested to see what the Vermentino looks like. Probably the most pale of the three. It's between sort of lemon and lime, I think. Yeah, it's actually a very pretty colour, actually. Moving back into stone fruit and orchard fruit. So this is somewhere between sort of white peach or, you know, slightly green apricot and maybe like nashi. Just a little bit of quince, but this has a similar, I wonder if this comes from the same vineyard, but it has that similar sort of slightly musky, floral, perfumed sort of character as the Fiano. Maybe it's a vintage thing, I'm not sure. Definitely aromatically probably the most subtle of the three. Let's taste. The Vermentino, for me, initially looks more savoury than the first two, but then it's got this kind of fruit-derived, candied, almost caramelized kind of character towards the back. It has a rapid trajectory across the palate. It really doesn't last long. It has a bit of a lingering. It lingers a little bit on the palate, but nowhere near as long as the Fiano did. It's possibly, for the Vermentinos, slightly on the simple side for me. I think I'm interested to see. Fiano probably is the one that is a lot stronger in Australia so far. I haven't seen many really exciting Vermentinos, but there are some very positive signs. So definitely the Fiano is the winner for me in this case. I think it has a lot of really good personality. Vermentino is very approachable, grapefruit, good drinking. Verduzzo, I think, is going to appeal to a broader palate. Certainly people who love Chardonnay. But a really interesting cross-section of three Italian white varieties in the Alpine valleys of Victoria. Thank you very much, guys, for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, please hit that like button, share it, and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you to Jo, of course, for making these beautiful wines, and it was an honour to be able to taste them here on Let's Taste. If you did like this video. Obviously, subscribe to the channel so you can see more videos just like this. And come visit me at IntrepidWino.com to get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. Make sure you are following me on social media at IntrepidWino. But until next time, guys, cheers.